Sri Lanka is one united nation again and fast on its path to a new future. A future for which a generation of Sri Lankans have paid for dearly, some with the ultimate sacrifice. The Sri Lanka Rupawahini Corporation, being the premier television network in Sri Lanka, considered it our duty to be actively involved in the formulation of that future. Thus, we bring you Checkmate, the stories of some extraordinary people who have gone that extra mile, set out that extra hour to achieve success in very ordinary circumstances, so that you too may be encouraged to aspire for such greatness. Checkmate, a new Sri Lanka, together we can. Hello everyone and welcome to another program of Checkmate. As you know, everyone doesn't make it on our guest list on Checkmate at Rupawahini. Our producers and our production team takes meticulous care in their selection. It's only those Sri Lankans who have surpassed expectations, who have gone beyond what would be expected in their respective fields, that actually make it on Checkmate, because that goes very much with the ethos that Checkmate is attempting to build in this new future for Sri Lanka and in our progress to getting that future secured. Because it is only those people, we believe, who can leave something behind in our archives for the future generations to come, so that they may emulate, learn, follow in that journey with this new future, this new building of the future that Sri Lanka has got. And that would be our contribution on behalf of Sri Lanka Rupawahini Corporation, by bringing these persons of immense talent onto our platform so that they can share their experiences with you as Sri Lanka forges ahead to build a new future. And my guest tonight is an absolute personification of all that Checkmate stands for. He is not only an outstanding achiever in his own chosen field, that of medicine, even in his days as a student, when he obtained his MBBS from the Medical Faculty of Colombo. He won several awards. He won his MBBS with a first-class distinction in surgery, obstetrics, gynecology, pharmacology, forensic medicine. He was a recipient of several awards of the Sir Andrew Caldecott Gold Award for competence. Then the Perry exhibition for the greatest competence during a 3-year period. He went on to a PhD in the University of Edinburgh, which we will discuss in time to come. But as I said, not only in medicine has he made a name for himself, but he's one of those rare, multifaceted individuals who have gone beyond his call of that particular area and also acquired eminence in other areas. He holds a master's degree in arts from the University of California, perhaps left and right brain both. And also, he's a senior fellow at the World Institute of Economics in research at the United Nations University. I speak of none other than Sri Lanka's proud product, our very own Professor Carlo Fonseka. Ayubowan, Professor, and welcome to Checkmate.
Ayubowan.
It's your forum. It's your Checkmate. Your few words in beginning.
Thank you, Chrismal, for inviting me to participate in your program. And let me begin, if I may, with a comment on the advertised title of your program, Checkmate. Checkmate, of course, is a term that belongs to the game of chess. And in the game of chess, if you are checkmated, your king has been captured, you have been totally defeated, completely vanquished. I have watched your program from time to time, and I have admired the easy conversational style you manifest, your obvious argumentative skills, of course, you are a professional lawyer trained to argue for a hired brief. But I have never seen you attempting to really checkmate anyone. So far as I am concerned, I am an out-and-out bookworm, and I tend to see everything in terms of what I have read in books. Books, after all, embody the collective experience of the human race, and books, reading books gives you access to the best that has been thought and said in the world.
Yeah, but on maybe we can start you off on that, because I want to discuss your early education, if I may. But on your observation, Professor, I thank you very much for your comment. Checkmate would, in Sri Lanka, Rupavahini Corporation's personification of checkmate, we like not to checkmate our guests because we hold them with much admiration and respect. Not necessarily because we can't, we possibly could, but more so, as you said, the brief that we carry here, I suppose, more in the sense of developing the country and getting the best out of you. I don't think we'll get very far by checkmating you. So let's start about your education, your early education. Where did you study?
Yes,
what's your background?
very easily stated. Primary education, Maristella College, Negombo. Secondary education, St. Joseph's College, Colombo. Undergraduate education, University of Ceylon. Postgraduate education, University of Edinburgh, United Kingdom. Looking back on it all, I think that the school education I received in Maristella and St. Joseph's College has had a profound impact on my mental development. I owe a great deal of gratitude, a great debt to the system of Catholic education that prevailed in this country. And so far as St. Joseph's College is concerned, I was something of a prodigal son, but under the present rector, Father Sylvester Ranasinghe, he has forgiven me and accepted me back to the to the great, yes, to the great college to which I owe so much.
Or rumor has it, when our guests come, we do a bit of research on. And people like you, it's very easy to do research. You're very popular. Rumor has it that you were a lover of the classics and literature as a young student, although you ended up doing medicine later on, particularly of Shakespeare.
Well, if you ask me what single thing I owe most to St. Joseph's College, I should unhesitatingly say a love of literature. Sinhala and English. And in English, as you remarked, love of Shakespeare, taste for Shakespeare. And I can still vividly remember Father Justin Pereira, dear Father Justin Pereira, introducing us to Shakespeare in 1948 when I was 15 years old. And he taught us Romeo and Juliet, the immortal story of passionate adolescent love.
He's a priest teaching you.
Priest teaching him, with cassock and all. And he was telling us in absolutely clear terms, look, love is a serious matter and it must necessarily lead to marriage. And he made this point by focusing our attention on the last part of the first conversation between Romeo and Juliet. There is Romeo on the balcony.
Juliet on the balcony.
You are right. Juliet on the balcony.
But these days, of course, Romeos can also end up on the balcony.
That's right.
I hear that Juliets are doing more these days.
Yes. With the equality of the sexes, I think you are right. So, and there is Romeo down, just about to go, and Juliet tells him 3 words, dear Romeo, and good night indeed. If that thy bent of love be honourable, and purpose marriage. Send me word tomorrow by one, I'll procure to come to thee. But if thou meanest not well, I do beseech thee to cease thy suit and leave me to my grief. So, having acted this out, this priest in his cassock is acting out the role of Juliet and telling us, look boys, Juliet was passionately in love with Romeo, but it was very clear in her mind that this love must go to marriage. This is why he said, if that thy bent of love be honorable and purpose marriage,
then you come back.
yes, otherwise get lost.
Yeah.
But of course,
It'll make me sad, but go away.
yeah.
Can I just, I know we'll discuss much about, not medicine and lots of other things to discuss, but on this particular point, happens to be a mutual passion. Are you then a more an ardent admirer? Obviously you are, but are you a believer also of that Elizabethan courtly love, or which the later on discussions that will lead to metaphysics and your approach to sciences, that gave way to the metaphysical world and how love was seen by the later poets after the Elizabethan era.
Yeah.
Where do you stand in this?
Well, I haven't made a very deep study of the literature in that sense. I'm just reacting to what
Was taught to you.
Father Justin taught us. And there he was telling us, of course, get lost if you are not interested in marriage. Juliet was too much in love and too polite to say such a thing. That is why she said, if thou meanest not well, I do beseech thee to cease thy suit and leave me to my grief. Now, Chrismal, to translate this Elizabethan 16th century Shakespearean English into language that modern kids understand, I should say it would go something like this. Look, if you love me, marry me. Otherwise, get lost. I'll somehow cope.
Yeah. Let me end up with that on our first segment, because we got to go to a break. But wasn't there also a Baila song that went, if you want to marry me, darling, come the proper way? So with that simple anecdote, we go for a small break, but there is much more to come with this amazing character who's in our studio tonight. Don't go away, we'll be back shortly. Hello again and welcome back to Checkmate. We're in the company of Professor Carlo Fonseka on Checkmate tonight. But before we get on to this segment, as you know, where we discuss his grappling and his interactions with the policy aspect of the Republic, I'd just like to remind our viewers of our email and Facebook page. You have the email address appearing at the bottom of the screen together with our Facebook page. I must also thank all of you, particularly those of you who are abroad, who at times watch us at wee hours of the morning or very late in the night. Thank you for your comments coming in. It's that dialogue that's important. Do keep writing into us and interacting with us, because it's with your comments that we make Checkmate that much more better for the future of all of us. So with that, Professor, you are now the chairman of NATA, that's the National Authority on Tobacco and Alcohol. How's your Mataratita battle faring these days?
Oh, that's a very, very broad question. And it's a utopian concept, Mataratita, but as Oscar Wilde said, I think, map of the world without utopia on it is not worth having. Anyhow, to start at the beginning, whatever some people say about experiencing pleasure and happiness, conditioned, learned pleasure from the use of alcohol and tobacco, there is no gainsaying the fact that use and abuse of tobacco and alcohol are responsible for a great deal of human suffering. In Sri Lanka, every year we lose 20,000 people to tobacco-related illnesses and another 20,000 to alcohol-related illnesses. This means 40,000, and if you remember, Chrismal, the tsunami of 2004 took away 40,000 of our fellow citizens. So, in terms of numbers, what tobacco and alcohol abuse, use and abuse does is to produce results equivalent to having a tsunami every year. Of course, there is precious little we can do about tsunami, but about tobacco and alcohol, we can do a great deal. Let me talk about this in very general terms. As you know, Chrismal, time was when communicable diseases, that is to say, smallpox, polio, diphtheria, tetanus, whooping cough, measles, I can go on, they were the scourges of humankind. But with the advance of medical science, these have been contained. Some have been eliminated, like smallpox.
Can we discuss more on the tobacco? I know that the time that I've been given is very little.
Sure, I can understand your impatience. But let me do this in a systematic way, looking at it in the broadest possible terms, as I say. There are these non-communicable diseases now confronting us. And what are these non-communicable diseases? 4 of them have been identified by the World Health Organization. First, the cardiovascular diseases, that is heart attacks, strokes, high blood pressure. And then you have diabetes and cancers of all sorts, third category. And the 4th is chronic lung disease. Now, these 4 non-communicable diseases have 4 major risk factors, and those 4 risk factors relevant to these 4 major NCDs, as we call them, are related to diet, exercise, tobacco and alcohol. Tired and retired though I be, I am basically a medic, so allow me to elaborate a little on this. So far as diet is concerned, for the sake of those who watch this program, the real problem is to avoid too much sugar, too much salt, too much fat, too much food. If you eat too much food, Chrismal, you will become fat and obese, and that's the road to diabetes. So, right. So far as exercise is concerned, it's the opposite. Too little and too infrequent. Half an hour's vigorous physical exercise every day will keep you healthy. Now we come to tobacco, and tobacco, as every schoolboy knows, and schoolgirl for that matter knows nowadays, is the single biggest killer. In the 20th century, it killed 100 million people. In the 21st century, it is set to kill 1,000 million, 1 billion, if present trends continue. The World Health Organization is sufficiently concerned about this, and they came up with what is called the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, the FCTC.
Can I just get a shot of this?
Yes, and that was in 2003. This became international law in 2005. Now in 2005, Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa also became the president of this country for the first time. And if you remember his now famous manifesto, in its very first paragraph, promised to do something significant, meaningful, drastic about dealing with the drug menace in general. And the result was, before an year elapsed since this election, we had the National Authority on Tobacco and Alcohol Act number 27 of 2006.
Of which you're the chairman now.
Yes.
Can I just take you from there, congratulations to you on the job that you're doing. Can I just take you on from there to a related problem? We were discussing the diseases and how even non-communicable diseases are causing a great deal of grief to lots of people. On the medicinal policy aspect of treating people, which I know is another area that's close to your heart. I know that the Bibile rationalization policy is something that's close to your heart. Maybe I can start you off, Professor. We always do this, quoting things that you have, our guests have said out on...
with your permission, Chrismal, let me just tell you very, very briefly the policy of NATA, the National Authority on Tobacco and Alcohol, in relation to tobacco and alcohol. 2 sentences would suffice. In relation to tobacco, it is to eliminate tobacco use. It does no good to anyone. It harms not only the smoker but also the non-smokers. Your cigarette can kill me. So, total elimination of tobacco. With alcohol, the problem is slightly different. So the aim is really to eliminate alcohol harm. Let's not talk about that anymore.
Yeah. So thank you. No, we understand the difference. But as I was saying, we like to quote things that our guests have said in public. In an article on the 5 fatal errors that you've given, you speak of error-free patient care as the ideal standard, is the ideal standard, but in reality is unattainable. Now, you also, we also know that you are very close to the Bibile rationalization policy, that is the concept of rationalizing medication, particularly of importation into the country. Now, I'd like to just put 2 figures to you with some research that we have done. It is said that that certain drugs that Sri Lanka imports, and as we know, Professor, maybe we will explain it in your dialogue, that there is a medicinal name for the drug that comes into the country, but there is a product name or a market name under which that medicine may be marketed. Now, for example, the medicinal name of atenolol, which is given for blood pressure, comes into Sri Lanka at ₹1.30. Now, these are figures are obtained from the National Pharmaceuticals Association, State Pharmaceuticals Corporation, generic versus branded products, 130. But then the brand names of that same medicine are sold for as high as 46 rupees at times. What comes into Sri Lanka at ₹1.30. And then this has been seen as a cause for a huge disparity in national state expenditure on medication. This is a research done by the policy group based on the Sri Lanka health account of 2000 and 2002, comparating budgets of 2000 and 2002. This was published in 2005, and this says that in the state sector, what we spend on the national budget for medication is 516 million. This compared to the private sector or the private medication is 16,882 million. 516 versus 16,000. Professor, this is a large disparity. These are the same patients, same sicknesses, the same doctors who work in the state hospitals in the morning, who go to the private hospitals in the evening. Why? Where are we going with the attempt to rationalize our drug use?
Well, Chrismal, you have stolen my brief. You have so succinctly summarized all the relevant facts and figures. Now, what is the answer to that? That's the question. Senaka Bibile came up with the answer. But I was afraid you might checkmate me on this because I was not sure on which side you were, but clearly you understand the problem better than I do. So I came well equipped with a book published in 2004, and this is written by Dr.
Marcia Angle.
Marcia Angle.
Can I just show it to us?
Yes, and she's a professor in the Harvard Medical School right now. And look at the title, The Truth About Drug Companies, How They Deceive Us and What to Do About It. Now, the truth about drug companies and how and what to do about it is something that Dr. Angel is addressing in 2004. Professor Senaka Bibile, under whom I had the privilege of learning in the Colombo Medical Faculty in the 1950s, he solved or at least offered the solution to the problem, and they are what you referred to as the Bibile policies.
For the sake of our viewers, Professor, do you want to just in brief articulate the Bibile rationalization policy, perhaps for those who are watching who may not be aware of what we are discussing?
Right. The exorbitant prices people have to pay for medicines, that's the problem. The drug industry, the medicinal drug industry is one of the most profitable in the world. Even more profitable, I should think, than the armaments industry. We don't know all the details.
There have been comparisons drawn.
Right. Anyhow, so how to deal with this problem? The main problem is to make effective drugs of good quality available to the public at affordable prices. So what Bibile policies are designed to do is to make drugs, effective
drugs
of good quality, available at affordable prices.
I'd just like to digress. There is an argument that is placed by several of the other camp, if you like, saying, okay, you may get it for the cheaper price, such as the 130 rupees, but are you getting the same quality as that of the 46 rupee product? Yeah. But these come from, highly tested out facilities, that sort of thing. How do we react to that argument?
Well, this is an old argument. It has been settled once and for all. They are just, that's what this book is about, how they deceive us. It's the same chemical, and standard teaching in medical schools is that you should prescribe by what you call the generic name, the official name, the non-proprietary name. That's what we teach medical students in medical school. All the standard textbooks advocate that. So that is going to make, you gave all the relevant facts and figures.
Can I just ask you, Professor, because I don't know, I'm not a medical professional. Now, you teach in medical school that we must prescribe by the generic name.
Right.
Has that been given some legal form now? Is that a requirement or is there a regulatory mechanism for that, or is it still at the ethical stage where you teach them, but they're free to do it or not to do it?
Yes. This is really the problem we are grappling with. Everything is ready. See, there were two basic things. Bibile propounded 7 policies, only 2 are relevant to our present discussion. The first is, as you say, prescribe by generic name. The second thing is import only the essential drugs. And there is this essential drugs list.
It has only about 350 drugs.
Okay, I will go so far as to say make it 1,000. There are 70,000 different medicinal products and combinations. This is big business. This is big pharma at work. So those two things resolutely implemented will make drugs of good quality affordable to people. And everything is now ready, and I think the present Minister of Health is very, very keen to get this implemented 34 years after Bibile passed to his rest.
Yes.
So in the land of his birth, his policies are not implemented enthusiastically. The World Health Organization has recognized them, praised them, recommended them to the rest of the world.
In fact, we don't have the time to go into it now, but I have material to say that in the 70s, the other areas in the region and even the world were going after Sri Lanka, proclaiming that it was Sri Lanka that has come with this rationalization policy and praising Professor Bibile for it. To date, we still wait to see it being implemented.
Yes.
But just, we have to go to a quick break, Professor, but as a passing comment, since we spoke of the great Professor Bibile who passed away, maybe you'd also like to pay our respects to our great friend Dr. Bala, who also championed this cause to the great part of his life.
He was Bibile's hand-picked right-hand man, and I think, I can't prove it, he was so depressed by the fact that in Sri Lanka, 34 years after Bibile's death, his policies were not being implemented. He was in a fit of depression, and I think he leapt to his death partly under the influence of that feeling of depression. Great man.
Great man.
I greatly respect
So
him.
let's hope as we go to this break on that somber note that we will learn lessons from the great men gone before us, where the land of the rationalization of medicines, the land where the concept was born, that we will very soon see it being implemented. We go for a short break. Yes, Professor, sorry.
Yes, Sri Lanka can show the world the way to go on this subject, and that's the name of your game in this program.
Yes. Checkmate. We come back to you in the privileged company of Professor Carlo Fonseka, much to discuss in his exciting youth endeavors on the man who took on the scientific approach. That's coming next in our next segment. Don't go away. Hello and welcome back. This is a segment where we propound our case and look to the future with our guest. And as a young radio DJ professor working for the SLBC, long time back now, young university undergraduate, earning my pocket money, we had this show called On the Road where we played songs. And I remember the best part was when it came to playing a song that I liked. That gave great pleasure because it was a personal favorite. And now I have the similar privilege so many years later with you for this reason. As young undergraduates, young students, to get to interview one of your heroes of the then days who went beyond the norm gives one great pleasure, just like playing that favorite song on that radio show that I did all these years ago. You radicalized the approach that we have seen then. The Professor Carlo Fonseka, or Carlo Fonseka then, the man who walked on fire with this scientific approach to life. You took on what was even mythology, superstition then, and gave it a scientific approach to life. I know that we have pictures of even the great Sir Arthur C. Clarke being a witness during these fire walking ceremonies. But I'm very interested in how you started this in your lab with an apparatus of a 40-watt light bulb in a metal cylinder, and how you got the volunteers to walk on it, tested it, and then you approached the problem. Do you want to talk us through this, your firework?
Yeah. Look, Chrismal, let's first get the theory right. The really basic problem to address is very simple. What is the most reliable method humankind has for gaining knowledge about the world we live in? What is the most reliable method humankind has at this point in time to gain knowledge about the world? My answer is, it is the method of modern science, and this is very simple. It consists of careful observation, formulating explanation, a causal explanation to account for the observations, and then testing to see whether the explanation is valid or not. Just 3 steps: observing, logical reasoning, and testing empirically. Now, this was the approach that I used to deal with the problem of firewalking. This is the approach that has enabled humankind to put a man on the moon, to crack the genetic code, to clone a sheep, to transplant hearts, to invent television on which you and I are now performing.
Can I just give you a bit of impetus there, Professor? You say, what you say. Politics, religion, economics and culture are more important than technology in shaping the goals and ends of human life. Technology is the only means to pursue desired ends, but as one who believes that modern science provides the most reliable knowledge and information about the world in which to base our lives. Professor Carlo Fonseka.
Oh, I have spoken more wisely than I know. I don't know from where you...
You defined what...
Okay, now see, apply this to the problem of firewalking or to the phenomenon of firewalking. You have a situation where human beings are walking barefoot on live coals and not sustaining burns. How come? Well, first the observations. I observed this in various places and critically, and most importantly at Katargam itself in July 1970. 300 people walked that fire, which was about 18 feet long, 6 feet broad and 1.5 inches deep, and I was able to count the number of steps each firewalker took, and I timed how long he took to do it. I'll give you the summary of results. 100 people were observed. They crossed the fire in 10 steps. It took 3 seconds. Now see, you have a very simple sum. 10 steps in 3 seconds. How long did it take to take a single step? 3 divided by 10, 0.3 of a second. Of course, the devotees say that it's divine aid and abstinence from alcohol and this, that and the other that's responsible for it. But it's the duration of contact. So if the duration of contact is not long enough to sustain a burn, then you don't get burnt. This is what Alice in Wonderland said. Some people get burnt because they forgot the rule that if you hold a red hot poker for very long, you will get burnt. So that's very simple. Elementary physics and physiology can explain firewalking. And of course, Arthur Clarke, as you said, looked at this. He was impressed. He joined this experiment and he wanted to put it on record. There was this marvelous program, a series of programs which Yorkshire Television did for him. Arthur C. Clarke's World of Strange Powers, 9 programs. He did one on firewalking and hook hanging. And
yes, we have some lovely pictures here, which we are going to show you as we go on in the program. We'll get the camera to have a quick closer focus on it. But you carry on, Professor.
Yes, of course there were token tots of alcohol. And
but that was just to disprove the fact that it had nothing to do with divine intervention, that your soul was not burnt. But you, I mean, at the time, was that the time, I know that you were a senior lecturer and associate professor in physiology at the Faculty of Medicine. And you later on became dean of the Faculty of Medicine, but was your interaction of this time at the same time that you were in the physiology department?
Yes, in Colombo in 1985. This particular
experiment
picture with Arthur Clarke was 1985, but my experiments were in 1969, and in 1970, when our college, medical faculty, celebrated its 100th anniversary, we had a grand show and every department had to put out something to attract visitors, and I thought, scientific explanation for firewalking. And Gamini Veerakovan, who was a cub reporter at that time, he came ferreting for information. It captured his imagination, and he made me, well, notorious overnight because it made front page news.
Professor, very, very quickly before we get to the next segment, I also want to quickly discuss education with you. But before we go there, maybe you can even draw a link between this and that. You revolutionized what was then thought to be divine intervention. You showed that if you physiologically approach this, and you also said, I know if we go into detail, that those who have continuously walked without shoes was less probable to burn than those with the softer soles.
Absolutely.
But with all that, the message is that if you approach problems scientifically, maybe an answer lies. This is on Checkmate as we look to the future Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
There are so many things where in Sri Lanka, we are still, although we are younger in age, we are still guided by what our parents thought or what our grandparents thought. In superstition, there are lovely parts of a culture as well, but also there are parts that we can develop on. A very quick word on getting beyond what seems to be the norm and approaching things scientifically. A quick word.
Yes, Chrismal, there is only one royal road to progress, material progress in this world.
Mind over matter.
Well, you can summarize it that way. If by mind you mean grappling with the problems in a logical and scientific way. But see, every single advance from primitive life to modern civilization has come by the use of reason, not by any other means. I would checkmate you on that. If you name some area where, you know, any other, of course, not everything that is important is amenable to scientific approach. That much is true. My position is that whatever I know to be true belongs to science. Whatever I know to be almost certainly true, absolute certainty is not available even to science, belongs to science. What is not true but may be true belongs to philosophy, and when it becomes confirmed, it passes on to science. And that's how it was. Originally, I think it was Aristarchus, a Greek philosopher, who first said that it was the earth that went round the sun. Yes, not the other way around. And later on, when astronomy established it, it passed from philosophy into science. Yeah. So philosophy is what we are not sure about.
Which gives way gradually to science.
Science is what we know.
Yeah. Going from philosophy to science and now to education, the time that I have with this gentleman to discuss the various diverse things that he's been part of in life is not sufficient. But we're going to try and do justice to your past, Professor. You have always been involved with the process of education. I think you're a lover of education itself, if I were to put it that way. A quick word on your past with the education, with the industry, with what education was, and going to the future.
Well, what is education? I have a simple definition for that. Education is essentially learning to think for oneself under the guidance of a teacher until you can think independently and do without the teacher. In my more irreverent moments, I say that education is learning to think for oneself under the guidance of a teacher until you can tell the teacher to go to hell. And
we wouldn't put it that way.
You don't necessarily have to tell him to go to hell, but you could if you so desire. And the better the teacher, the quicker you will be able to do that. And a good
teacher will appreciate that.
Of course. And good teachers in science especially will produce students who quickly dispense with them, excel the teacher. I have any number of students who have excelled me, from whom I now learn. to that extent, I am a successful teacher because the students are better than me. Anyhow, so education, the educational process is that, learning to think for oneself. Now, of course, I have been in the field of medical education, and Sri Lanka has a very good record. I think it compares favorably with legal education. We started in 1870, the first medical school, and now it flourishes as the prestigious Colombo Medical Faculty. Then the second medical school came in 1962 at Peradeniya, and now we have 8 medical faculties producing about 1,000 doctors. But Chrismal, that's not enough. I may be in a minority of when I say that, but it is my view that we don't have enough doctors. And if you doubt me, let's stop this program and go to any of these private hospitals now, where doctors are working at late hours just trying to clear crowds.
I want to come there with you. Maybe can I just get you a quick word on this whole problem, and then we discuss the problem in detail. We know that there is aversion from certain segments of the crowd to the so-called private medical colleges. A quick word, Professor. Private medical colleges, good or bad? And then we'll get to the problem. Is it needed or not needed?
I have been in the state sector every time. But of course, I have now reached the point when I'm out of the system, but I have been taking this view for quite some time. The North Colombo Medical College, let me put it this way. Ideally, the state should produce
all the required doctors
because it has the resources. However, if for one reason or another, if the state is either unable or unwilling, or for policy reasons they want to end the monopoly on medical education by the state, then I should go along with that. And the experiment has already been done. In 1981, the North Colombo Medical College was established. It functioned for about 10 years, and it produced 850 doctors who are all doing well in Sri Lanka and various parts of the world, and about 100 of them are no second to any other doctors we have produced in the country. So the private sector can produce doctors of good quality.
Yeah, but how do you face the argument? I know we have to. How do you face the argument? Very quickly, once again.
Yeah.
Sorry to be rushing you, but how do you face the argument that the state sector students that it will not be of the same standard, that you are trying to bring in inferior standard quality degree and pitch them with us and keep them or incorporate them into the same system? How do you meet that argument?
No, that's not true. Some misguided medical students are saying that. Has any responsible educationist said that? And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The North Colombo Medical College has produced excellent doctors, no second to those produced in the state sector. And I'm a state sector man.
But what you're trying to say is that the increasing number of patients, as you say, sometimes it's crazy. I mean, I think most of us don't go unless we know someone there. Little cubicles, they're standing in rows to meet a doctor. Sometimes you can't pass through with even an urgent patient at some of the private hospitals. We need to find an answer to this.
Let me give you 4 reasons why there is a case for private medical schools in this country at this stage of our development. First, there are not enough doctors. Only 55 or so for 100,000 people. Compare with UK, 220, America, 230, Australia, 250, India, 60 or more, Pakistan, 70 odd. Only Bhutan and Nepal are below us. So we need more doctors. Second, our system of selecting medical students by the state, this reverse discrimination with the district quota, leaves out many well-qualified students. They are the ones, many of them, who went to the North Colombo Medical College and made it.
Yeah.
Second reason. Third, there is a demand for medical education. 200 or more of them leave Sri Lanka every year in search of medical education, and they are a drain on our foreign exchange. 4, if we set up medical schools here, all that foreign exchange will be saved for one thing, and we can draw students from outside. It will raise our national income.
Of course.
4 reasons.
Yeah. Well, that's a discussion on its own, but I think I'll find it difficult to argue against that brief, but maybe my production team would love me to interview you once again, maybe with some other doctors, and take both sides of the divide. Maybe we'll think of doing that. But Professor, it's been an absolute pleasure seeing you again, a privilege talking to you on air, and an honor to interview one of our youth heroes like this at a platform. But we always do this before we go. We ask our guests, because you are picked, you're brought here for that Sri Lankan who may be watching you 25 years, 50 years hence, when these things are archived and played back to them. What does Carlo Fonseka have to say to that future Sri Lankan watching?
Well, that's a very tall order to talk.
In brief.
Talk to posterity. I think it was Golda Meir who said, "Don't be humble, you are not great enough to be humble." I see that you conclude your program very inspiringly with that quote from Longfellow. Chrismal, I would I thought about this before I came to the program. I would like to end my part of this program by quoting 2 lines from a poet whose name is not very well known, Grantland Rice, but I think many people know the 2 lines that I am thinking of. For when the one great scorer comes to write against your name, he marks not that you won or lost, but how you played the game. Now, in the 1950s, there was a journalist, Suti Banda by name. I'm told he was the father of our great violinist, Diseram.
I see, Joseph
Joseph Diseram and Lakshman Joseph Diseram, yes, world-class violinist. And his father concocted this trilingual verses, and his version of this particular thing goes something like this, if I recall right. For when the superior scorer comes to write against your number, he marks not that you